Let's talk about something absolutely terrifying. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about spooky, scary stuff, and I actually have an email where anyone finds this page to send me their ghost story, and this is one of them. So let's get into it. I do just want to preface that this story is one of the shorter ones that I've received, but it is one of the scarier ones in my opinion because I personally don't know what I would do in this situation, but let's get into it. This story comes from somebody who did not let me know whether or not they wanted to remain anonymous, so for obvious reasons, I'm going to keep them anonymous. And the person who sent me this email starts off by saying that this happened to them years ago, around the age 12 to 14. So we're talking like middle school-ish age. So the person who sent me this was scrolling on whatever social media at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, after noticing the time, she is like, okay, yeah, it's time to go to bed. Puts her phone down, and it's important to note that her bed was right underneath the window in her room. So she couldn't see out of the window unless she turned around in her bed. But as she's trying to fall asleep, all of a sudden, she hears this little giggle. I don't mean like a normal human giggle. I mean like a scary ass movie giggle. And she particularly hears this outside of her window, which in my opinion is so effing scary because what if somebody's just standing outside of your window? Anyways, turns around in bed, doesn't see anything, stays up the entire night to make sure that this thing or somebody is not playing tricks on her, doesn't see, hear, or notice anything. Daylight comes around, nothing is different. And that was the first time that this started happening. But wait, there's more. Months after the initial incident, she was getting ready for school, walks into her room, and immediately hears somebody say her name in her ear. She turns around and there is nobody there. And if you have experienced that particular instance of hearing something that is not there, it is genuinely the most terrifying thing ever, especially if it is someone's voice saying hey or your name. Immediate no from me. Like I said at the beginning of the story, I have no idea what I would do in this situation, so maybe comment down below what you would do, because I fear I would not sleep in my room after that. But anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
Ooh, so listen, it's been a while since I told a Miss Pike story. Now, if you don't know who Miss Pike is, I grew up in a haunted house. Miss Pike has been with me since I was like 8 years old. She's a ghost, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so she does little stuff all of the time. A lot of the times I don't even tell you guys about it because it's like no big deal, whatever, whoop-de-doo, right? Well, the other night, I couldn't sleep. I never sleep, ever. It was like 2:30 in the morning. I'm in the living room, and I had my earbuds in, right? So I'm sitting there. Now, when they die, it's like, low battery or whatever, and then it's like, goodbye, after it says the low battery for like 5 minutes or something. Well, they just automatically turned off. It just said like goodbye, and I'm like, okay, did I miss the low battery thing or whatever? Ignored it. Well, then I thought I saw something like over here, right? Like on the like side of my eye. And I'm like, maybe not. So then I had my hair back in a ponytail, by the way. So then it said like JLab on, connecting to whatever. The only way you can do that is if you push it and like hold it, right? Now, that freaked me out a little bit because I wear them every night. I have since like 2020. I sleep in them every night. I know how they work. If they say like goodbye, they're like done, the battery's gone, they will not turn back on. They won't. Like, especially after they say like goodbye, I mean, that's it. And maybe sometimes they will, but they don't randomly turn on. You have to like hold it like for a while. And as soon as it like, I felt the push on my ear, like where it turned, like she turned it back on, I saw her, but not like fully her. It was just kind of like a white mist. And it creeped me out, but it scared me a little bit, not gonna lie, because I wasn't expecting it. I didn't feel her around. She just kind of like, boo, like hopped in or whatever. So I just took that as it's time to go to bed. Got up, went to bed, and then I realized that I had left the light on in my office, and I was like, oh, because I had to walk all the way back down through the living room, like around the corner. And the office is scary at night anyway. So I did that thing you do when you're a kid where you like, and then flip the light and bolt because I had to like run through my office and back out and then like ran all the way to the bedroom. So yeah, I don't know if I'll be hanging out in the living room when I can't sleep anymore, especially when she's like, take your ass to bed already. Did you hear her just hit the window? Yeah.
This email I got is super sad and creepy, and I'm not going to give you any details up front because I'm just going to give the story away. So we're going to call the submitter of this story Selena, and this story is about Selena's mom. So when Selena's mom was 16 back in the 1980s, she had these two friends, and they were both girls, and they were both 16 or 17 years old, and they were walking on the side of the road. So both of these girls went to school with her mother, and they were walking down the street by their school. So as they're walking down the street by their school, they see a car coming, and they realize that this car is swerving. The driver is drunk. So the driver swerves towards them, and one of the friends pushes the other one out of the way. And the one that pushes the one out of the way, unfortunately, gets hit. Now, after she gets hit, she goes to the hospital. Sadly, she passes away from her injuries. Because her mom knew the girl, she obviously went to her funeral, and she took her mother and her grandmother with her to the girl's funeral. They just go, they pay their respects, they leave. A couple days later, they are driving down the exact same road as that girl got hit. Now, her grandmother is driving at this point, and they're just driving, chilling, when suddenly her grandmother just slams on the brakes. And her mother looks over at her grandmother and says, "Did you see that too?" Grandmother responds, "Yes." And she explains to her that she saw a little girl in the road that was wearing the exact same dress as that girl who passed away was at her funeral when she was in her casket. Same hair, same features, same face, same everything, because it was the girl who had passed away. Now, the crazy part is that Selena said that her grandmother passed away 3 years ago, and that when she passed away, her memory was pretty bad then, especially when it had to do with things from when she was younger. But when Selena asked her grandmother if she remembered this story, her grandmother remembered it very well. Selena thought it was crazy that her grandmother, even in her late 80s with terrible memory loss, could still remember that day. So what did you guys think about that story? First of all, that's so sad. I know you didn't know that girl, but I'm sorry for your mother and just your grandmother that they saw that, and that your mother experienced that with her friend. That is devastating. That's why you never ever drink and drive, because that's what happens. People can get hurt and they can pass. Do you think that what she saw on the side of the road that day was her friend? Because it sounds like it. But tell me what you guys think. But please, especially with this story, please be respectful.
For those of you that know me, know that my brother used to live with me, and a lot of paranormal things that I've experienced, my brother has also experienced. And I know I've said it many times that I feel like it's his home, but I also feel that I used to encounter very demonic things when I used to be in this very toxic relationship. So this one night, when I was with my then partner, we ended up getting in a huge argument, and he was drinking that night, so he takes off driving. His sister comes over and she convinces me to go look for him. So I go to the car and she forgets her phone. She ran back inside, and I'm waiting there for like 5 minutes. And I'm like thinking, what the fuck, did something happen? Did she get a call? When she comes back, she's literally pale white. And I ask her, what the fuck's going on? Like, is everything okay? Well, I guess when she ran back inside, well, before she ran inside, she's knocking at the door, waiting for my brother to open it. Hopefully you guys can't hear that. They're watching the football game. Well, she said that she knocked on the door and he's taking forever, and she feels something creeping up behind her, and she's thinking it's me. So she turns around, right, expecting me to scare her. And I guess that it was this black shadow that just was like creeping up, walking towards her, and it stood next to her. And she said that when she saw it next to her, she's like ringing on the doorbell, like even harder for my brother to open the damn door. Well, when my brother opens the door, he said that he asks her, "Do you see it?" And she's like, "Yeah, can you see what's standing next to me?" So he opens the door and she runs inside. And they're both trying to figure out what the fuck was standing next to her. He's scared because he's like, this shit's real, right? If she's seen it, I seen it. Like, this had to be something. You know, she comes to the car and she's telling me like what happened. And so I call my brother and I'm like, hey, you know, everything's fine. You're fine to be at home. You know, we're going to go look for him. And so we end up leaving and looking for him. But like, I always had a feeling like when he would drink, he would get so angry, and I always felt like there was like something, like a demonic fucking presence, like the look in his eyes, the way he looked at me, honestly, it felt like he wanted like unalive me. And it was only when he was drunk, like he turned into a complete, honestly, different person. And so whenever I left that relationship, I mean, I still experienced paranormal things. They're not as dark as when I was in that relationship. I mean, when we would argue, shit would fly off the table and just break. Or we would always see dark shadows around the house. Could it have been something that was attached to him that was like, demonic and shit? Or was it just him that he would carry that energy around? I don't know. But if you are in a relationship where you don't feel happy or safe, love yourself enough to walk out of that relationship.
Do not play with the Ouija board or you might end up in a psych ward. For the first time ever, I'm translating a story from Spanish to English, but this happened in Indiana. So there was a group of 3 girls who decided to go camping. Once they get to the campsite, they get some logs, they turn a fire on, they get some chairs, and they just decide to chit chat around and just relax, which was the point of this trip. So one of the friends, as they're talking, notices that from afar, she could see this little camp store, and the entire time she only sees that there's one lady in there. So she ends up telling her friend, hey, why don't we go into that little cabin, talk to her and see what she's up to, or if she has anything to tell us about this campsite. They were all very social, so they all agreed that they wanted to go and talk to the girl and just chit chat. When they get there, they notice that this lady is very quiet, very to herself, but something is weird about her. So they end up asking her, hey, what's your name? And she tells them that her name is Destiny. They all agreed that the way she said her name was very mysterious. You wanted to know more about her. So all 3 of the girls start talking about themselves, where they're from, what they're doing, and it almost looked like Destiny was really not interested in any of their conversations or about them at all. And after a bit, Destiny finally speaks up and says, do you guys want to do something fun? And of course the girls were like, yeah, let's do something fun. What do you want to do? Destiny goes into her store, walks out with a Ouija board. The second the girls saw the Ouija board, they're like, oh, no, we don't want to play that. We're not interested in that. We don't want to do this. Destiny kind of convinces them to play, and they were like, fine, but only one time. They all put their fingers on the board, but the weirdest thing happened. Destiny's eyes went completely black, and she starts talking to each of the girls individually and starts telling them things, very personal things about themselves that nobody should know, not even their besties. She was saying things that were private to the point where they hadn't even told their best friends that were there. So once she says all these things to them, and obviously they know that Destiny should not know about this, 2 of the girls started running. They got scared. They didn't want to do this anymore. And of course they thought that their third friend, who her name was Juana, was running behind them, but Juana did not run away from Destiny. Of course, out of every group of friends, there has to be that one person who loves creepy, spooky shit, and unfortunately, that would be me. That would have been me. Juana did want to run behind her friends, obviously, but she was more curious, and she tells Destiny, I want to know more. What else do you know? Tell me. I want to hear everything. But that's when Destiny tells her, go after your friends. I'll follow you. Destiny would have gotten the ass beating of a lifetime if that was me, because what the fuck you mean you're following me, bitch? What the fuck? When Juana finally catches up to her friends, they're already inside the truck. They're waiting for her to get in. They were terrified with the way that Destiny was telling them the information, with the way that Destiny was acting. It was all very strange, and they decided they didn't want to stay the night there. They were gonna go and get a hotel and come back the next day to grab all their belongings. So they do end up coming the next morning. They run into this guy that was a security guard for the grounds, and they end up telling him about that weird girl in the log cabin thing, the store, and that if they can go and get their belongings with them, because of course they were scared. This security guard person was like, well, first of all, you guys camped over there? And they're like, yes, all of our stuff is there. He's like, you're not supposed to camp out over there. You have to camp out on the opposite end. Everybody's prohibited from camping out over there. No one's supposed to be over there. And he's like, second, there is nor am I from fucking England now? He said, second, there is no store over there. There's no stores at all. There's nothing over there. The reason why it's prohibited to camp out over there was because a lot of kids have been drowning, because it was really next to this lake or something. Sorry, it's not a lake. It was a lagoon. I'm listening to it in Spanish. Okay, I'm sorry. The guard also tells them that there's been stories of things manifesting on this side of the lagoon, which is why no one is supposed to camp over here. If somebody knows about this place in Indiana, let us know. Tell us where it's at so that we can never go. Anyway, they try not to listen to this guard because obviously they're already scared. So they're like, can we just go get our belongings? We want to leave. He goes with them. They get their belongings. They turn to the direction where that little cabin was with Destiny, and there is nothing there. Nothing. Not a cabin, not a store. Like, there was nothing there. The three friends make it back home safely. They all go to their own homes, and that is when shit just goes down. Juana, the friend who stayed back, the one that told Destiny she wanted to know more, and Destiny's like, go with your friends. Don't worry, I'll follow you. Well, Destiny started showing up in her dreams. On some of those dreams, Destiny would tell Juana, today this is gonna happen. This is how you're gonna react. But you can change it if you want to. She would wake up, and that is exactly what would happened in that day. Destiny had become such a presence in Juana's life that Juana decided that she wanted to get help, and she couldn't find anybody that could help her. The friend who actually submitted this story to this podcast said that they believe that Destiny was not human, and that now looking back at the way that they were talking, at the way that Destiny was looking at her, at the way that they all talked to her, they could tell that she was not human. She was definitely something else. The point is that her friend Juana was never able to get rid of Destiny. Till this day, her friend is at a psychiatric clinic and they think she's crazy. They think that whoever she's saying is there is really not there. And unfortunately, they don't think that her friend is ever going to get out of there.
Guys, this story I came across is so freaking bizarre. I don't even know what to make of it. So this man tells this story and he starts it off with, yeah, I'm pretty sure I met a vampire or a demon once. He says that when he was a teenager, he got into an argument with his abusive stepfather and he ran away from home. He said he didn't really have anywhere to go, so he walked around for hours and hours, and then he eventually made his way over to a bus station and sat there waiting for a bus that he didn't even have money to get onto. He said it was really creepy because at first, he was the only person at that bus shelter for as far as he could see in all the directions. And then all of a sudden, somebody was coming up to him, almost as if they appeared out of nowhere. He says he has a really hard time remembering what he even looked like, but what sticks out was he was sickly pale, wore a really long dark coat, and he said he had a smell to him that was unlike anything he's ever smelled before, and he can't even describe it. Apparently, he was talking to him about how nice the weather was, and this guy's like, it wasn't nice. And he also mentioned that he'd been waiting for a while. So this man replies to him and is kind of like, yeah, I hope the bus gets here soon. And he said that whatever this was, whatever this person was, kind of gave him a smile that indicated to him that maybe he wasn't talking about the bus. But he said at first he didn't even realize that because he was so distracted looking at this guy's teeth. He said they were jagged and yellow, like as though he would have filed his teeth, each one into a point. He also said that his teeth were abnormally large in size compared to normal teeth. So he says that all of a sudden, this overwhelming sense of dread flooded over him, and all he wanted to do was to run, but something inside of him told him if he were to do that, that would be the end of him. So he said instead, he kept the conversation going. He says he can't remember much about their conversation, but he does remember at one point they ended up talking about railroads, and he said to this weird person that he actually did a school project on railroads recently. And then all of a sudden, this guy, whatever, kind of like his demeanor just changed. And then he asked him, how old are you? And he said at the time he was 14. And as soon as he found out he was 14, he genuinely looked shocked. And guys, that's the last thing he remembers until he woke up in his bedroom. He said he can't remember the rest of the conversation. He does not remember leaving the bus stop, nor the hours-long walk it would have been to get back home. He said everything was just blank, and all he could remember was that feeling of dread. Also, that he was in the presence of something terrible, and that he was about to. He says he has no idea what saved his life that night, but even after all these years and he looks back and thinks about it, it makes him feel sick to his stomach. How freaking creepy is that story? Like, why would age matter to something that's dark and evil? Do any of you have any idea what something like that could have been? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you have your own creepy story, I would love to hear it. And if you're new here, definitely follow for more creepy story time.
Let's read a couple scary stories that were sent to us. Okay, first, y'all, I dyed my hair last night. We did like the highlight cap at home. I think I like it. I want to go like lighter. I kind of like the dirty blonde look. I don't know. What do y'all think? Let me know.
Okay, so the first one is a creepy story from Lou in the UK. I was home one night a few years ago. It was about 10 o'clock at night. My 4 children were in bed, and my partner at the time was in the bath. I was in my bedroom, which has glass panels you can see through to the hallway, rather than a solid wall. I was just laid there watching TV when I suddenly started to get a really uneasy, cold feeling come over me. The feeling made me sit upright and look around the room and through the glass panels. And as I did, I saw a black figure that looked like a child's height walk down the hallway towards my bedroom door. Now, normally, I would get up to go check and make sure the kids were okay, think nothing of it, and put them back to bed. But this night, I was frozen with fear. I could feel myself holding my breath and felt myself feeling really stiff. A few minutes later, my partner got out of the bath and came to the bedroom. I asked him to check the kids, and he did. They were all sound asleep. He asked me why, so I told him, and he said it definitely wasn't the kids, as you could tell they were in deep sleeps and hadn't moved. I still live in the property, but have never seen anything since, but do have the odd things that are knocked or fall over in the kitchen. They also said that their 13-year-old son tells them that he quite often sees a man in blue jeans and a white top in his bedroom doorway. Apparently he's been seeing it since he was like 8 or 9 years old, but he says the spirit isn't scary and the spirit hasn't bothered him. So that's good. Okay, story number 2. When my aunt was 13, she was with her cousin who was 12. Her bedroom was in the room right next to the living room. While they were watching TV, the door handle started to rattle. My aunt and her cousin were crying and yelling for it to stop, which it eventually did. I eventually had my own experiences. Often I would go to my grandfather's house after school. This is the same house my aunt used to live in, hence my grandfather is her father. When I would sit on the couch, the door would always slightly open, and I always felt like someone was watching me. Another time, me and my brother were sleeping over at my grandfather's house in the spare room, and there's this one piggy bank that's also somewhat like a baseball. I'll insert a photo. But every night when me and my brother sleep over, the piggy bank would always be turning to face me when I woke up in the morning. There was another time me and my brother were sleeping over, and we heard a knock on the window, like frantic, and I swear I saw a handprint on the window.
America's national parks are peaceful, beautiful places where families go hiking, camping, and enjoying nature at its finest. But something strange has been happening in these places. People are disappearing. And of course, going missing in the wilderness isn't unusual, right? People get lost. Animal attacks happen. Accidents occur. But the disappearances I'm about to tell you cannot be explained by any of those things. And there's one man who has been tracking them for over a decade, David Paulides. He spent 20 years in law enforcement, working SWAT, street crimes, and detective assignments with the San Jose Police Department in California. But before he started investigating missing persons, Paulides spent years researching something else entirely: Bigfoot. He wrote 2 books on the subject and founded North America Bigfoot Search. Some might dismiss him for this, but others see it differently. Here was a trained investigator who wasn't afraid to look into phenomena that mainstream science ignored. And then in 2011, something changed. Paulides was doing research in a national park when 2 park rangers approached him separately, and they told him something disturbing. People were vanishing from the parks under strange circumstances, and nobody was looking into it. So Paulides started digging. He reviewed over 5,000 cases and identified roughly 1,200 that couldn't be explained by animal attacks, voluntary disappearances, or mental health crises. What he found was disturbing. 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds were disappearing. Children would go missing and be found days later, miles away. And the locations where they were found, places that had already been searched multiple times, as if by some impossible trick. People call this phenomenon missing 411. The name comes from American slang. 411 is a phone number for directory information. It means the facts or the info. Missing 411, missing information, because that's exactly what these cases have in common. January 2019, North Carolina. A 3-year-old boy named Casey Hathaway vanished. He was playing in his grandmother's yard when he simply disappeared. There was no one around who could kidnap a child. He was just gone. 56 hours passed. Then Casey was found about half a mile from his home. Casey said something strange. A bear took care of me. And there's a reasonable explanation. Casey's favorite show was Masha and the Bear. But then researchers discovered something very unsettling. This wasn't the first time a child had said something like this. Since the late 1800s, children who returned from unexplained disappearances have described the same thing. A big animal took care of me. In hundreds of cases investigated by David Paulides, children who returned alive told similar stories. They all spoke of strange beings. There was a logger's daughter who went missing in the forest. Search teams found her by a creek, standing on a log. When they asked what happened, she said, "A big furry wolf had me." In April 1952, a 2-year-old boy named Keith Parkins disappeared from his family's ranch in Oregon. 19 hours later, searchers found him 12 miles away. Survival expert Les Stroud, the host of Survivor Man, attempted to recreate this route for a documentary. Stroud has spent decades teaching people how to survive in the wilderness, but that night he stopped and said, "This is impossible. This child did what I can't do. He didn't do this alone." And there's another thing the survivors have in common. They have no memory. Where they were, how they got there, who they were with. It's not just children. Adults experience the same thing. They just disappear, and then they just reappear. Paulides says to dismiss children's testimonies as mere imagination, too many children are telling too similar stories. Alongside the disappearances, there were peculiar eyewitness accounts. One witness was the wife of Bruce McCabe. She was a hunter who used a bow. One day, she was in the forest, sitting quietly, waiting for prey. Then she saw something about 15 meters away, near a tree. She described it this way. It was like something was in my eyes, like looking at something far away through plastic wrap. It reached from one tree to grab another and slowly moved. When she got home, she told her husband what she'd seen. He asked her to wait and put on a movie. The 1987 film Predator. A scene appeared showing a transparent alien creature moving between trees. She cried out, "Oh my God, that's exactly what I saw." When David Paulides shared this story, similar reports flooded in, saying they had experienced the same thing. There was another strange pattern. Disappearances occurred disproportionately near rocky areas. People would hear or see something near rocks and then vanish. But Paulides collected dozens of eyewitness accounts of something emerging from rocky areas. Too many to be coincidence. David Paulides uses a particular expression when describing these cases. It feels like a harvest, as if someone reaches into a line of people, selects one, and plucks them away. It seems random at first, but when you investigate, patterns emerge. The people who vanish share common traits, very strange common traits. The first group is geniuses. Doctors, scientists, highly educated people. They disappear at disproportionate rates. The second group is the opposite. People with developmental disabilities. People with congenital conditions. David Paulides has a friend named Harvey Pratt. Harvey said most Native American tribes believe they descended from star people. We have always talked about our connection to the stars. Looking at the disappearance cases, Harvey Pratt's stories about star people don't sound far-fetched. It makes you wonder if there's some connection, like UFO abduction cases. People ask Paulides, so what's taking them? UFOs? Bigfoot? What? He just says, it can't be explained by one thing. So, what's behind these disappearances? People have been asking David Paulides this question for over a decade. He always gives the same answer. I don't know. In 2022, Paulides released a documentary called Missing 411, The UFO Connection. In the documentary, he presents cases where disappearances coincide with UFO sightings in the same area. One case stands out. In 1974, a hunter named
Weird spooky dating stories. I was 16 and I had just started dating this boy. Things were great, but I didn't know much about him. We had hung out a few times with friends and nothing seemed off. About 2 to 3 months into dating, he came to pick me up and we went on a date. When he dropped me off at that night and was backing out of the driveway, I saw a dark figure behind him in the back seat. It was a shadowy man with reddish eyes. I was freaked out, but I talked myself down, telling myself that I was just imagining things. A few days later, I talked to his mother. His biological mom is deceased, and told her what I had seen in his truck. Her mouth fell open, and she told me she had seen the same thing several times following him. So I asked my ex about it, and that's when he explained everything to me. He told me that he had sold his soul to the devil in hopes of seeing his deceased mother. Oh my gosh. He said it worked for a short time until one day his mother turned into a demon. Since then, he sees this entity everywhere, and it has been controlling his life. I tried talking to him about ways to get rid of it, people to reach out to, things he could do, but he refused. Later, he admitted that he didn't want to get rid of the attachment because, in his words, it makes me feel powerful. Well, first of all, that was never your mother you were seeing. That was just a demon tricking you. And also, how does it make him feel powerful? Like, what does it do? Does it do like his evil deeds? Like, if somebody like does him dirty, does he like sick the demon on it? And then also, even if he does, like, don't those things like eventually turn on you? I don't know. That's really creepy. I really hope you broke up with him immediately after that. It seems like you're talking about him as like an ex in past tense. Thank God. That's really scary. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, or if any of you have had a spooky experience like this, send it my way.
Let's read another true and scary story. I was 8 years old when this happened, and to this day, I still cannot explain it. We lived in an apartment back then. Almost every night, after my parents went to bed and my sister and I were in our room, we would hear someone running up and down the hallway. It was not quiet either. It sounded like real footsteps, like a child sprinting back and forth. My sister and I would lie there frozen, listening, too scared to move. We told my dad over and over again, but he never believed us. He thought we were imagining things or just trying to scare ourselves. My mom, though, had her own experience. One night, she told us she woke up in the middle of the night and saw a little boy standing in their room. She said he looked at her and softly called her Mommy. She had never seen him before in her life. Even after hearing that, my dad stayed skeptical until something happened to him. The bathroom in the apartment was right next to my parents' bedroom, and from their room they could clearly see when someone walked in or out. One night, my dad was getting ready to shower before bed when he saw what he thought was my sister, Sandy, who was 13 at the time, walk into the bathroom. At first, he didn't think much of it, but after an hour passed, he told my mom, Sandy's taking a long time in the restroom. He got up and walked to the bathroom door. He knocked. There was no answer. He tried the doorknob, and it was locked. Confused, he decided to check our bedroom to see if maybe she had come back to bed without him noticing. When he opened the door, he saw both of us, me and my sister, fast asleep in our beds. That's when it hit him. To get back to our room from the bathroom, my sister would have had to walk right past him. He slowly turned back toward the bathroom. This time, the door was wide open. The lights were off. No one was inside. What? That is insane. The fact that you and your sister and your mom both had similar experiences of like a child interacting with you somehow is so crazy because it's clearly the same entity haunting the space. I'd be curious to know whether or not this is like residual energy from a boy who was previously in the apartment and passed away. Either way, very, very spooky and interesting. And I'd be interested to know if you have any other stories with this boy in your apartment. Thank you so much, Ashley, for sending this one in. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
The crazy thing about skinwalkers is that they can appear as anyone, including your own grandmother. Now, I had heard a story from this girl. She said when she was younger, she was hanging out with her uncle and her cousin. They decided one night to go to their grandmother's house. When they get to their grandmother's house, they go inside and they're yelling for her, but she doesn't respond. And they think, oh, that's odd because usually at night she's never out of her house. Finally, they find her in her bedroom and she's sitting in a chair next to her bed with this blank stare on her face, just looking at the wall. And they say, Grandma, are you all right? And their grandmother just jumps up and just starts screaming and is like, who are you guys? Who are you? Like, where am I? And they are like, what is going on? So the uncle comes in and he's like, you kids go in the other room. And the grandma ends up going out to the kitchen and she's like very erratic. And they noticed all of a sudden like her voice went from like her normal, older lady voice to like a deep man's voice almost. And they said she goes into the fridge, she grabbed like a raw steak and just started, eating it. And then so the uncle, he's trying to calm the grandma down and is like, what's going on, Mom? What was wrong? And this 90-year-old, skinny, small grandmother takes the uncle and just throws him. And then she runs over to the washing machine and picks it up and tosses it across the room. She then proceeds to start running towards the front door and then goes outside and takes off running down the street. So the uncle gets up and is like, everybody get in the car right now. So they get in the car and they start looking for the grandmother. And they can see her like running down the street like she's 21 years old, And finally, like when they get close to the grandmother, they said like she just ran into someone's backyard. So they park the car, they get out, they go towards the backyard and they see a coyote just like run out of the backyard and they don't see their grandmother anywhere. So the uncle, he calls up the aunt who's like the normal caretaker for their grandmother and he's like freaking out, telling him what's going on. And the aunt's like, what are you talking about? Grandma's with me at my house. So the uncle is just like confused about what happens. He tells the girl and her cousin, get in the car, we're going home. And they asked him a couple times, well, who was that in the house? And the uncle said, we're not going to talk about it, just quiet. And he said for the rest of their life, he never talked about like what had happened that night, even at like family get-togethers.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
Yishun is a rather haunted place. Who knew? This user submitted a story and it happened in none other than Yishun. So this story happened around last year, April or May. So this user, let's call her Anna, and her friend, let's call her Claudia, snuck out of the house to hang out under Claudia's block. So this is at night, by the way, and at their void deck, they decided to play Omi TV, which is basically Omegle. So they got paired with one of their schoolmates on Omegle, and they decided to meet up since the schoolmates were also outside. The place that their friend stayed was around 10 minutes from where they were. And they probably had to pass through this temple over here. And beside this temple is a columbarium. Fun fact, this place used to be a cemetery once. The big hill you see behind this temple all the way to the next junction used to be a cemetery. So Anna was still on her phone talking to her friends on Omegle, and suddenly Claudia started running. She called out to Claudia, but Claudia didn't look back, and then she looked to the left and she realized that, oh, she's at the temple. Then at the dark corner, she saw a pocong just staring at her. The face was black, the cloth was covered in mud, and it was very, very, very tall. Once she saw this, she ran as fast as she could to join her friend at the traffic light junction. And I think by then, Anna knew why Claudia ran. She just looked at Claudia and asked, "You saw it too, right?" And Claudia just nodded her head. So they both just decided to keep quiet about it throughout the night. Now if you guys have any stories to share, drop them a link in bio and I'll check them out.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity, featuring my necklaces. I wear a necklace almost every single day, and if I'm not wearing a necklace, I'm wearing my bracelet. The bracelet is the match to this necklace. Fantastic Valentine's Day gifts. Now onto the story. I stop and listen to your stories every time they pop up. They make me realize that I'm not the only one going through these things. It's crazy how many people actually do go through these things. It's crazy. Since I was extremely little, 2 years old, I've been able to see and talk with spirit. My uncle passed and I would talk to him all the time, but when I was around 7, I got an imaginary friend, as my parents called him. When I was with my grandpa one day, he asked about this friend and I told him how he was the kid that was in my room before me, and his stepdad unalived him. Bitch. What? What? Oh, that poor kid. I gave him details that no one else in my family knew. My grandpa did research and found out that it was all true. That was when my family realized what was happening. Just a few years back, I was at my grandparents. The little boy from before has always been around me since I was 7 and saw him for the first time. And that's important for this part. When I went to my grandparents' basement to do laundry, I came up and mentioned to my grandma that I hated the little boy that hung around there. He was always peeking around and staring at me and had since I was little. My grandma thought that it was a little boy that I always had around, but I told her that this boy had lighter hair. The original one was black hair, and this one was light brown/blonde. I gave my grandparents details and got asked how long I'd seen him. I explained when I used to be scared of their basement as a little kid, it was because of the boy. Come to find out, before my grandparents met, my grandpa had a child who passed at the age of 5. That's fucking sad. I described the kid to a T and how the kid loved playing hide and seek. I'd been seeing my uncle and had no idea until then that it was happening. I'm also the kid that when someone passes in the family, they always show up in my dream. We'll have a talk where they'll tell me everything that they need to help me, help them move on. I would not want that responsibility. That seems like a lot of responsibility. You know what I mean? Just me? Okay. My dreams have always felt like it's hours/days, even if it's only 30 minutes in reality. Just this past year, my aunt committed self-unaliving. No one in the family lived by her or saw her regularly. I found out before anyone because of having this strain. My grandma likes to use this as a way to make sure that someone is at peace and has moved on now. Again, that feels like a lot of responsibility. Get somebody else to do it. Anyway, rate on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. It's more sad because 2 children died. I don't like that. Oh, I hate these ones. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I'll see you all at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
This is really creepy. Last night in Long Beach, California, we had an elderly woman who had a strange encounter with something she can't explain. Now, I don't know exactly what it is, but it definitely is eerie. At around 9:55 p.m. last night, this woman at her home in Long Beach said she had let her dog outside into the backyard. Now, it was a small yard, it was a fenced-in area, and she had went inside to take a phone call. After the phone call was done, she said it was maybe 15 minutes or less, she goes back outside. She notices the dog is barking at something on the other side of this picket fence. So as she approaches it, she said she sees something standing on the other side. It is on all fours. She said it looked like a person that was kind of crawling around near the fence, and it was making some sort of hissing or clicking sound at the dog, and it was causing the dog to go crazy. So she gets closer to the dog and she says, come on, like, get inside now. And she said as it was alerted to her presence, this thing sort of took off. And she said as it took off, she could tell that it had these bright red colored glowing eyes. And she said as far as she could tell, it ran off out into the neighbor's yard and then took off into the street. She did not see where it went, but she said she definitely felt like this was something not human, nor was it an animal. And she said it was about as big as a person, probably around 6 to 7 foot tall, and she couldn't make out any sort of identifiable characteristics, but she said it definitely did sort of look human. The Beast of Bray Road is one of the cryptids that I think actually could be real. Now, there have been over 300 plus sightings in Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, and Iowa alone. And this comes from credible witnesses who have no reason to make this stuff up. So for me, there's something definitely being seen in Wisconsin. Now, the epicenter of sightings comes along Bray Road. And this story specifically comes from Elkhorn, Wisconsin. There was this man named Lindy. Lindy said one night he's driving with a couple friends along Bray Road. He was being followed by another friend in a separate car. And as they're making their way down Bray Road, he said, there was about a foot of snow covering the sides of the road. And he said, just remembered it being very cold and very eerily quiet. And as they're making their way down Bray Road, he said, out of the corner of his eye, he's seen something run across this field. And he said it was very large, like a bear. So he tells his friends, hey, did you see that? What was that? And his friends are like, we didn't see anything. What are you talking about? As they are discussing this, the car all of a sudden fishtails and goes into a ditch. Well, he swears up and down that something hit the vehicle and caused it to slide into this ditch. But his friends are like, no, that's impossible, man. You just slipped on some ice. So they get behind this car and they're trying to push it out of the ditch. The other friend in the other car is sitting there waiting. And for about 15-20 minutes, they're trying to push this thing out. Well, he started to get a really weird feeling, like they weren't alone, like they were being watched. So he tells his friends, we'll come back here tomorrow and get the vehicle. Something's not right. Let's get out of here. So they get in the other friend's car and they're getting ready to leave when they look over, and standing about 20 feet from where they were pushing the car is this 7-foot tall, large looking werewolf-like creature. And they said it had the snout of a dog. It had these long pointy ears. It had bright yellow eyes, and it had arms that reached all the way down to the ground. And they said this thing was just kind of, standing there, slightly moving. It turned, and then it ran off into the woods. They take off, get out of there. The next day, when he came back to get his car, he said there were all these strange footprints in the snow leading into the woods. So what do you think? Is the beast of Bray Road real?
So here's another spooky story coming out of Mesa, Arizona, or is it Mesa? Which one is it? How do you pronounce that word? But either way, this is about the sun-kissed factory that was there at one point. And when it was first being renovated, I believe it is a wedding venue now, but when it was first being renovated, some of the workers started complaining to the foreman about some strange happenings. The workers kept saying that there was a shadowy figure in the basement. Now, this place had long since been abandoned. It had been abandoned for a long time, and so it was really unusual that there would be something in the basement. But it wasn't just this figure that they kept seeing. They kept hearing a rhythmic echo, like someone was bouncing a ball in the halls somewhere. But it got even creepier when workers started seeing a red ball that would roll along the floor and then disappear behind a dark corner. The foreman didn't start taking this seriously until the workers were like, listen, either you're going to get this checked out or we're going to quit. That's when he decided to get Jay Yates, who was a paranormal investigator, to come in and see what was up. Now, Jay has done over 30 paranormal hunts in this abandoned factory, and he says that it is one of the most haunted locations in all of Arizona. Now, despite having been there so many times, he still doesn't know why exactly it's haunted. He thinks that it could be because of a worker who was buried under some oranges and lost his life that way. He also thinks that the woman or the shadowy figure in the basement could be from a woman who lay down in front of a train right behind this factory. But either way, he is absolutely convinced that this is the most haunted location. But since it's a wedding venue now, would you have your wedding here? It's an interesting thought. I don't know if I would. Let me know what you think down in the comments and follow for more spooky things.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. Back in the 1980s and 1990s, my mates and I used to spend a lot of nights fishing at the entrance of Lake Illawarra, about a 2-hour drive south of Sydney. We'd camp out, drink, fish, and stay up all night like idiots with nothing better to do. Being locals, we'd heard all the stories. People said the entrance was haunted. Most of the stories came from fishermen, and if you know fishermen, you know they're not exactly known for underselling a story. Some claimed that on really quiet nights you'd hear footsteps moving across the sand behind them. Others said they'd hear a faint voice drifting in from the surf, too soft to understand, but close enough to notice. A few people even claimed they'd see a figure moving along the beach. Almost everyone mentioned the same thing though. That feeling that someone was standing behind you while you were fishing. We didn't really believe any of it. We brushed it off as campfire gossip. And honestly, most nights we were drunk or stoned anyway, so even if something did happen, we probably wouldn't have noticed. That said, I can't deny that sometimes the feeling of being watched was unmistakable. One night, though, something changed. One of my mates had a dog named Buddha. Out of nowhere, Buddha became extremely agitated. He started growling, barking, and carrying on at the bushes behind us, like something was seriously wrong. He wouldn't settle. He kept scanning the darkness, pacing, staring into places we couldn't see. At the time, we blamed it on wild rabbits. There were plenty around, so it made sense. Over the next few months, we kept fishing there. Buddha came along a few times after that and seemed totally fine. No strange behavior, no issues. Until one night, that turned into a complete nightmare. My mate Steve, who's the dog owner, was fishing about 100 meters away from me. I suddenly heard Buddha barking again, aggressively, and I saw a torchlight whipping back and forth in the distance, like someone was desperately searching for something. Then the torchlight snapped towards me. It was bouncing up and down, getting brighter, fast. Steve was running toward me, full sprint. He said he'd seen a figure, a ghost, in his words, moving strangely, bent over like it was reaching for something, and then, just like that, it vanished. Darren and I didn't believe him. Not really. We laughed it off, but Steve swore he'd never go back. And he never did. Years passed, and slowly another rumor started to circulate, and this is the point where I stopped brushing it off at all. Around 2012 or 2013, a couple on holiday were walking along Windang Beach at sunset, heading toward the entrance. In the distance, they noticed a person acting oddly, like they were drunk or unstable. As they cautiously got closer, the figure disappeared, exactly the same way Steve had described. That's when I started digging deeper. I found reports of a human skull discovered in the area. Then another case, years earlier, where a woman drowned her baby and herself near Windang Beach. And then something even more disturbing. A headless body found in Lake Illawarra. All separate incidents, all tragic, all real. So now the question isn't whether people are seeing something. The question is, what? Are these spirits connected to those deaths? Is one of them haunting the entrance? Or are these sightings all pointing to something else entirely? Because if all these people across decades are seeing the same thing, then maybe the entrance to Lake Illawarra isn't haunted by the past. Maybe something is still out there, watching.